every national college football insider has some sort of source, some sort of angle on what's going on right now. And in the wake of Pac-12 teams leaving for the Big 12 and the Big 10, you're left with the Pac-4. And apparently the ACC has been kicking the tires the last couple of days on adding Stanford and Cal. You and I were both, and we've texted people like, what? And most of the response that we've been getting from people is, well, they're just doing their due diligence. Well, how long does it take to do the due diligence on this and understand that this doesn't really make any sense? Shout out to Joel Anderson, big fan of Joel Anderson over at Slate, where this is 1:55 a.m. in the club and the lights are on and you're like, all right. And the ACC is essentially, what are y'all doing after this?
Even before the preposterousness of SMU entered this conversation.
Right. Then SMU shows up. Shout out to listener Jameson, who's like, man, this is like me at the end of the semester with all my C-bucks, my convenience store bucks at NC State.
We were the opposite then because mine were gone in the first
right.
week.
His was like, oh man, like how many bugles can I take home with me as I gotta fulfill this card. But anyway, the whole thing's a mess.
Without saying who this source is.
Okay.
This is kind of funny. This is even before SMU.
All right.
Cal Stanford, maybe the dumbest in a long line of dumb ideas by the ACC.
All right. So people are trying to make sense of what this is about. All right.
I can't.
The only way it makes sense is if you're looking at it from a couple of different angles. The first one is, how badly do Stanford and Cal or SMU want to be in the ACC, and what share are they willing to take? So now we get into my favorite topic of conversation, the sliding scale.
Okay.
If they are willing to take a cut rate deal to join the ACC, take a smaller share of the pie to join the ACC and have stability, that means they can then go back to ESPN and potentially get more ACC network cable subscriptions in Texas for SMU, in California for Stanford and Cal, which would increase the revenue that would then be distributed to the other schools, and Florida State would be happy. Because remember, everything's to placate Florida State and Clemson.
That implies that anyone, anywhere cares about SMU.
Thank you.
Cal.
Thank you.
Or Stanford.
Right. That's the assumption, that you think you can go to market with these teams, which I will then ask the presidents who are, quote unquote, kicking the tires or doing their due diligence or deep diving into the financials. Did you just see what happened to the Pac-12, where they went to market with a whole ass conference? All right. And the best they could get was a shit deal from Apple that was broken down into incentives. Essentially, as somebody pointed out, I want to say it was a FOIA request. I want to say it was some president that essentially said, you're asking us to sell candy bars house to house to make this work. So
my favorite line, my tag-alongs, like we act like this is the Girl Scout cookie marathon.
Essentially, that's what it was. Let's go door to door to try to sell these things, and that's how we're going to make money. So if the entirety of the conference could not go to market and get a same rate deal that the Big 12 just got from ESPN, what makes you think that the leftovers of the Pac-12 are going to do anything to really boost your financials? And then
also, Cal is the worst run athletic department in the country.
Yes.
Like at some point,
with an administration that actively goes against athletics. I mean, I think didn't they just kill the baseball program, and the baseball program
you keep asking who's going to be the
petty.
You keep asking who's going to be the first to tap out.
Yeah,
they would literally be better off tearing down their football stadium and selling the real estate. That's how bad off they are, and they just renovated it and put themselves like. This is McClatchy Media back in the day, buying newspapers in 2008, and Bank of America signing off on that for $1 trillion. Okay,
yeah,
that's how stupid this is. Like Cal, at some point, you just have to tap out and say we can't do this anymore. And actually, the Pac-12 did them a favor, because now Cal can go back to being a world-class university, and they could probably tear down their football stadium and sell condos on the land that is amongst the most valuable real estate in the country.
I'm trying to galaxy brain what the presidents in the 80s are thinking about looking at SMU, Stanford, and Cal.
We're about to have a conversation with someone that is going to explain to you these presidents and I'm gonna watch my language here. But
for once,
these presidents, they get into a popsicle measuring contest.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, oh, you want to hang out with West Virginia?
Mhm.
Oh, my, they're not a member of the AAU.
Mhm.
You want Louisville? Come on,
How
look at
dare
their
you?
graduation rate.
Mhm.
You know, and yes, this hits home a little bit because you got Duke and Virginia and Carolina. They act like the only thing that matters is graduation rate.
Wake Forest.
And then you look at State's graduation rate and you're like, wow, State must be, they're a terrible school because their graduation rate is terrible.
No,
And
people wash out. That's why.
and they wash people out.
They wash people out.
It's harder to get into those schools, but then once you get in, they keep them in for that reason.
As someone who washed out of computer science, trust me,
Yeah.
you wash out really quick. I saw a lot of people in my freshman class that just could not cut it. I mean, I got wise and switched my majors. Shout out to first year college, because otherwise I would have really been washed out. But first year college was a pilot program at that time, and that's what got me into the business.
These presidents think, 90,000 people are going to show up to watch me read a book. No, sir.
No. So the galaxy brain thinking is that you're putting
That's
yourself.
the disconnect, though, Joe. That's the disconnect.
Oh, I agree.
You have people don't realize this. I didn't realize it. Holden Thorpe didn't realize it. The presidents are the ones who make decisions in college football and college basketball and college sports. You're talking about people like Holden Thorpe who had zero inclination to follow or care about sports because they were trying to lead what they thought was a world-class university, worried about academics. And they think about that's the lens they think about it in. And this is why Mike Krzyzewski's been screaming forever. Why don't we have people who are assigned to run these sports independently?
Well, because they're too
and
busy.
do what is best for not only these sports, but the players in these sports.
They're too busy making sure that Tez Walker doesn't play at UNC.
Exactly.
That's,
for what?
That's the key.
For what?
If they're trying to if the ACC is trying to position itself so that when things end up being basically two conferences in college football, the SEC and the Big Ten, and they're trying to pick at schools that they know will stick around and become Big East 2.0, well, then you're just essentially signing your own death certificate as a conference at this point, because you're just going to give Florida State and Clemson more reason to want to leave. Financials aside, my understanding
That's
of
not the time to panic.
No, I agree. The best move, it's the old war games. The best move is to not play. Just stick out with your grant of rights. You've got the grant of rights. That's your leverage
and
point.
The curse.
Yes, it's the golden handcuffs. I use the golden handcuffs term all the time. You're locked in, you're making money, but also you're decidedly third place and by a large amount of money.
Okay, but just wait until the expanded playoff starts.
I agree.
And Oklahoma and Texas don't get in. And USC and UCLA don't get in. And Seattle and Oregon don't get in.
Let me wrap this point about Florida State and Clemson, the grant of rights. My understanding of the grant of rights is that if these schools come on, they're the ones. Like, you're adding those members, they're tied to the grant of rights. It doesn't change anything about the current membership. However,
if only we knew someone who drew up the grant of rights.
Yeah, right. However, why would you do anything to give Florida State a reason to try and challenge it? Because you could easily get a lawyer to go, you've added Cal, as we just pointed out, a department that does not care about athletics, is poorly run, and wants out of this whole game. It's broke. Actually broke. Okay, like for real broke. All right. And Stanford, they're not bringing butts to the seats. SMU, like, where are they on the pantheon of Texas schools? The Pony Express? You want to bring the Pony Express? If I'm a Florida State lawyer, now I'm suddenly on Florida State's side. That's how dumb this is. I find myself on Florida State's side if they do this, because you'd go, you are actually devaluing the ACC by doing this, and we want out. And that's what they could fight in court.
Well, I think Florida State, when they said they're not worried about the grant of rights, they're going to they want to negotiate that, and they're either going to tap into their endowment, or they're going to raise enough money in this private equity, boondoggle to make it work.
PIF, man, PIF.